Again, welcome back to uh, Unit 2, Lecture 1 on issues related to supply and demand. So this is the last lecture on the issues related to supply and demand. So we have seen that there are issues related to supply because we have got less water resources. There are issues related to demand because there are high amount of demand because the amount of water resources that we use is quite higher than what actually is required for an individual. So in that case, what we can do, what are the management methods, or what are the ways that we can mitigate these issues or to solve these issues? So let us look at some of the management paradigms. There are two approaches to looking at solving these issues. One is through supply management, meaning can we increase a little bit of supply of water resources if we have? So all of us, we know that right now we do not have much supply of water. It's only like 0.01% of the total fresh water that's being available for us in a form of river and streams and lakes and ponds that can be supplied. But do we have a little bit of other possibilities that we can supply? Let's say desalination, as all of us know, or melting of ice and glaciers, as all of us know. So are there any kind of supply means that we can have more amount of water resources? So yes, so we can invest on more water infrastructure, meaning we can invest on infrastructure which will save water, which will let us supply more water through this good infrastructure. Definitely, we can have good international and inter-regional collaborations. For example, if India is not having a good water resources supply, what they can always do is they can always collaborate with Bhutan. They can always collaborate in order to have water resources from Bhutan flowing to India so that they can use these water resources. So interregional and international transfers can be done in order to increase the supply. Another way is to decrease the way of groundwater mining. So if we decrease the mining of groundwater, and specifically if we do not maximize the increase of groundwater through modern ways, but if we have to use, please use the older or traditional methods of extracting groundwater, so that most of the groundwater which are extracted is not only affecting the quality of groundwater but also minimizing the groundwater that we extract, so thereby keeping the supply more. So these are three of many other ways that we can increase the supply of water. But increasing supply is not the best way to deal with the water demand and supply issues, because if we are focusing just on increasing the supply, if you're not changing the mindset of people, if you're not changing the demand base of people, just increasing supply may make the resources to limit its physical, economical, and environmental resources. So there will be one point of time, even if we do lots of activities to increase the supply, it will reach its limits. And policy, such kind of policy is not going to have very good long run effect. So they will pose definitely a very long term risk. And when we are increasing supply from extraction of water from aquifers, we're basically destroying these aquifers. If the aquifers is specifically located at near the coastal area or near the sea or ocean, what we are doing is by withdrawing or by pumping out. Like in the first lecture, we have seen something else on cone of depression. So we are drawing coastal water or sea water to our aquifers, which is again going to pollute the aquifer system with saline water. And at last, If you are just focusing on the supply side, the ecosystem provided by aquatic systems is going to be degraded, because what we are mostly focused is we are mostly focusing on giving more water to people, giving more water to industry, giving more water to uh, uh, power, so thereby not focusing more on environmental aspects. So biodiversity is going to be degraded. So these are few of the criticism that we get from supply side. But in order to stop depending on more on supply sides and its policies, it's better for us to look at the demand side. Let's say the supply is supplying of water, but demand is how we are demanding. For example, um, yesterday I demanded 4 jerrycans of water to cook one afternoon meal or one lunch for 4 people, let's say. But I should realize that the supply of water is less. So what I can do to in order to enhance through my demand management is that yesterday I finished 4 jerrycans. Today I will just finish 3, which is less than 4, or I can just finish 2, which is lesser than still 4, and thereby I'm demanding less water. So because there is a less supply which we cannot modify. So in order to cope up with the less supply, what I can always do is I can always demand less. So this kind of demand management can be done. We need to encourage lots of people, lots of institutions to come up with efficient water using system, using techniques which will conserve more water, which will make us to ask for less supplies. So we need to encourage better existing use of water supplies through economical and efficient management before further increasing the supply. What we can also do is we can list institutions which are dealing with water to come up with efficiency policies, regulations, efficient materials which will actually demand less water, and less water has to be supplied. Again, sustainable management of water is one of the key concepts of any management regime or paradigm. Specifically, if you look at water resources planning or water resources management or integrated water resource management, there we look at how to increase the water supply, how to minimize the water demand. Just a small example, integrated water resource management lets us to have a good amount of trees in the forest, less degradation and deforestation, and using water meters which will which people have to use in their water system, and because of the bills that they have to pay towards the end of the month or towards the end of the period, they are quite sensible, and they are quite conscious that they have to pay bills, and they are actually reducing the amount of water that they are demanding. So this kind of institutional changes can be done from the demand side instead of increasing the supply. I'll just give you 2 examples. One example is from California, how they are planning and how they are implementing this kind of supply and demand management regimes or systems. In California, it was found that 6 million acre feet of volume of water is being used more. 6 million acre feet more water is being used than the actual actual sources of water can supply to them. But if they really look at those regions that we just mentioned, like management regimes from demand management perspective, like demanding less water, using efficient technologies and methods to reduce the consumption of water, usage of water. So if they can do that, in California itself, they can save up to around 14 million acre feet of water, which means 14 million acre feet of water can be produced separately from this kind of techniques. and which can be used for cultivation of other fruits, vegetables, and trees which they could have planted, because they could have planted, but they could not plant because California is already using 6 million acre feet more water than they have. So 14 million can be used. 14 million can be produced if we follow demand and management supply regimes. The techniques, like some of the techniques that California applies, is that they reuse the. Can you see the logo of reuse over here? They reuse the water, meaning the water that's been used in kitchen or like bathroom, that the grey water can be reused for watering the lawn, watering the vegetables, farms. That can be reused. Water can be treated and reused again. And second one is agricultural efficiency, meaning smart irrigation system. For example, not the flood irrigation system. Instead of flood irrigation system, we can always come up with a drip irrigation system, whereby instead of flooding the area with lots of water, we can just give drip or drops of water to only plants that require water, and the timing of water can be adjusted again. Lots of agriculture efficiency measures have been taken. For example, like introducing machineries to plant, sow, harvest the crops and vegetables are one of the agricultural efficient techniques that they have applied. Storm water is something that they have utilized. The rainwater that California gets, they have harvested, not only harvested, but they have actually used for recharging the groundwater. Lots of urban efficiencies, like the technologies, like for example, the simplest things like the water tap, the traditional water tap can be fixed with the modern technology based faucets and shower heads and all, which will pour, or which will have only water coming out, just required water coming out. Again, with the sensors, whenever we go in front of them, water comes out. Whenever we go out of them, water disappears. In that kind of urban efficiency is being used. That has actually saved 14 million acre feet more water, and that's something we are looking at, the demand management mostly. In Gulf Coast, another example, like second example that I was trying to tell is in Gulf region or Gulf Coast countries. Surprisingly, 140% of demand is there for water in this past 1 decade. And interesting thing is that they are increasing the supply. They are using the supply approach. They want to increase the supply of water, because I do not know they can minimize, or they can do some more modification of their demand, but looks like they are more into supply management. So 60% of the world's desalinized water is coming from this Gulf Coast area. That means they are using lots of technology to desalinize the water system in order to supply more water resources. Again, it's found that lots of water is being gone to agriculture system. For example, 85% of Gulf Coast countries water system is being gone for agriculture. Again, that's huge again. So if they have to have more water in their community, then what they can do is they can either reduce the demand per capita, or they can either reduce the water that's being consumed in agriculture. So some of the strategy that they're using is cloud seeding. That means they are making their own artificial cloud that can make the rain, artificial rain, and again increasing the supply of water resources. Bringing in icebergs, yes, again increasing water supplies. Water networking, again, they're establishing lots of water networks with other countries to bring in more water. Again, I'll just mention other possible scenarios that they are thinking to increase the water supply or water demand management technique. Is one of them is obviously water desalinization is one thing, and they are actually investing on water-rich countries to do their agricultural activities. So they cannot do agricultural activities because lots of water is being gone to agricultural activities in their country. But what they can also do is they have money, they can invest on those countries which can do agriculture, which can invest more water in their farms and agriculture, and that kind of things are going on. Because if they invest water in the agriculture sector of other countries, then the water can be of less burden to Gulf Coast countries, which is good. So these kind of activities are being taken to to mitigate water supply and demand issues. But most importantly, most of the cities they found out that um, wasteful consumer behavior around 45%. Most of the issues, demand and supply issues, mainly because of wasteful behavior of the consumer. So they waste lots of water. Again, another is insufficient capital resources for investment. So in order to have a very good water conservation system, you need to have lots of technology. You need to have a good amount of tanks, syntax, a good number of and quality of pipings connected from source to the sink. So lots of investment has to be done, but some of them they feel that the demand and supply of water is going to increase because of insufficient capital resources for investment. And again, climate change is another thing that's causing around like 34% to have this water demand and supply issue. So that's it on, I'm not prolong on this one, but as long as what I see is, as long as if we look at the consumer behavior, if you just manage from a demand perspective, lots of water issues are going to get alleviated. To know more, I have uploaded an assignment on water issues related to supply and demand. Please read that material. Please read that material and write a summary of 1 page, and please submit it by not latest by 7. This is not something that will be marked or credited, but this is going to be audited, meaning no marks, but still you need to write it, and I need to look at whether you have understood the issues related to water supply and demand in Russia. So whatever you understand from this this reading, please summarize in 1 page and let me know